So what's our second motivation example? Suppose that risk-free T-bills yield 4% with certainty, and the risky stock that we're looking at has an average yield of 2%. Could be more than that, could be 20%, could be 0. So it's risky. On average, you get 2. And the question we're interested in is, would you ever buy the risky stock? So, T-bill, 4% for sure. Risky stock, 2% on average. Would you ever buy the risky stock? So raise your hand if the answer is yes. Okay, raise your hand if you think the answer is no. So now, the obvious one is maybe the wrong one, and so many of you are raising your hand. So is this the question where the obvious one is the correct? No, it isn't. The correct answer is yes, you would be willing to buy the risky stock with an average yield of 2%. The question is, why? How could that possibly be if you can get 4% for sure? And again, the answer lies in, you've got to think in portfolio terms. We're going to be holding stocks of portfolios, and that changes everything. If you'd put all your money in the risky stock versus the risk-free T-bills, for sure you go for the T-bills. But if you have got a portfolio of stocks, then this can be an attractive investment, 2% on average. Now, how is that? Well, the way to think about this part of the course is you've got somebody who's got a portfolio of stocks. They're using the income from the stocks to live. So it's rich people. Now, what is your nightmare if you're one of these people living off your stocks? What are you really frightened of? That the stock market will crash. So what we've had the last few years, in the financial crisis, or even more extreme, the Great Depression. If you're in the Great Depression, your stocks have tanked, in very low value. What is the stock that you really want to have at that stage?
Bonds?
So bonds will do, maybe help you hedge, but what's the stock that you want? Well, most companies do badly in a recession or in a depression, but that's not true of all companies. What kind of companies do well?
Walmart, McDonald's.
So those do, yeah, they're somewhat hold up, but some companies actually boom. Who does really well in the Great Depression?
Companies like pawn shops and stuff like that.
So pawn shops would do well.
Bars.
So, one group that does really well is bankruptcy lawyers, right? If you are a bankruptcy lawyer, this is your dream time because everybody's going bankrupt. If you're in finance, what do you want to be in the bad times? Distress, restructuring, those kinds of things. So there are businesses that boom in bad times. Now, if you've got one of those stocks in your portfolio and it's paying you a high return, like 20%, this is really great for you because it's giving you money exactly when you need it. Everything else is doing terribly, but these counter-cyclical stocks are doing really well. Since they're valuable, can they give you money in the bad times when you really value it? what's their price going to be? It's going to be high price. If that price is high, what's the yield? Low. So this is a stock which is giving you money at the time you need it. And that's why it's valuable, and that's why you can have this 2% return, because it's giving you very high returns, like 20, 30%, in the bad times when you need money. In the good times, it's doing terribly, but that doesn't matter, because what are all your other stocks doing? They're doing well and supporting you. Any questions on that one? Now, these are all examples of the capital asset pricing model, or CAPM. And this is the model of risk, which is very important, that we're going to develop. And what it says is that the expected return on a stock or a portfolio or any set of investments is going to be the risk-free rate. Usually we use T-bills as the proxy for that. And then we've got the beta of a stock. I'll tell you about that in a minute. And then we multiply it by RM minus RF. Now, RM is the expected return on the market portfolio, which is all the stocks in the economy weighted by the values of the firms relative to the total. It's the long-run expected return on that market portfolio. And then we subtract the RF, so that this is the market risk premium. It's how much the market pays you on average above the risk-free, which, as we'll see, is quite considerable. So RM minus RF, on average, is a big number. Now, what about this beta? Well, the beta is the covariance of the stock return with the market return. And then we scale it by dividing by the variance of the market. So what this is saying is what really matters for the risk of a stock is its covariance. The covariance with the market is high, it's high beta, and it's going to have a high return. If it's got a low beta, it's going to have a low return.
RF is risk-free.
It's risk-free, so something like a T-bill return. Now, our motivation examples are just applications of this CAPM idea. What's the covariance of the gold prospecting stock with the market, do you think? It's going to be 0. Whether you strike gold or not doesn't depend on how the stock market is doing. So here, we've got a 0 covariance and therefore a 0 beta. So in fact, in terms of its return, this gold prospecting stock is like a what? It's like a risk-free, because this beta is 0, this term drops out, and we get that the return on this stock is the risk-free rate. Does everybody see that? What's the beta of this stock? What's driving it? It's the economy, and so what's the relationship between the market and the economy? They move together, obviously. If the economy's doing well, the market's doing well. If the economy's doing badly, the stocks are doing badly. And this is one which is like that, so it's a positive beta stock. And since it seems to move perfectly with the market, it may actually be 1, as we'll see. So this is a high-risk stock. It's going to have a high return because the beta is going to be positive. and it's going to be well above the risk-free rate. For our example, here, what's the beta of this stock? What's the covariance with the market? We said we want a stock that does well in the bad times. So what kind of covariance? Negative. And if it was perfect, it would be maybe negative. But it's negative for sure, so we've got beta less than 0. Beta's less than 0. What's the expected return on the stock? Well, this is going to be negative times a positive, so it's going to be below the risk-free. And that's why we've got 2, which is less than the 4% rate. So these are all just examples of the capital asset pricing model. Yeah. So this is the T-bill rate, and T-bills are arguably the safest asset.
So the 2% in the second statement
Yeah.
is noted as the average yield.
It's an average yield, so it's not safe. We can be at 20% or we can be at 0.
So should we usually interpret it as a risk-free rate?
Which one?
If the question says the average yield is X%.
So if it says average, then it usually means it's risky. If it says it's safe, it's safe. Question?
Why does beta have to be below 0? Like, could it be, is a positive beta, but our aim is too low?
So we're going to argue that in equilibrium, stocks will be priced to reflect their fundamentals, so markets are efficient. So it's like the one we had of growth stocks versus value stocks back in section 4. So if you see a stock with a negative beta, or if you see a stock with a expected return less than the risk-free, then the deduction would be its negative beta rather than its mispriced. Okay. So it's the same as we had before. Then you,
What does that actually mean when you say that the return of the gold mine is risk-free rate? If we have 2 different gold mines, will it mean that the return of both mines will be the same?
so it means the return in percentage terms would be the same. Okay, so if you've got, you might have a small gold mine, you might have a big gold mine, they're both going to make, the T-bill rate's 4%, they're both going to have a return, the stocks on those
Even if they
mines.
have different probability of success?
The stock's going to be priced that way, so they may have different expected payoffs, but the prices are going to adjust for that in such a way that the expected returns are going to be the same. It's an important point. Other questions? Yes?
Why is beta less than 0?
So beta is just the covariance of the stock with the market. So we said this is a stock that does well when the economy's tanked and the market's way down. So this is a stock that's doing very well. It's like bankruptcy lawyers or whatever. And the market's doing terribly. So if you've got something that's doing well when the economy's doing badly, and the stock does badly when the economy does well, that's negative covariance, as we'll see. That means negative beta, and if this is negative, it's below the risk rate. Any other questions on any of that?
What if the beta is negative and then the RM minus RF is also negative?
So we know in the long run, and we'll just come to this next, that stocks do better than the risk-free rate in the long run. Other questions?